Hello and welcome back to the SecurityMetrics podcast. I'm Jen Stone. I'm one of the principal security analysts here at SecurityMetrics. So excited today to talk to you. This is our final episode of Season 2. Season 3 is going to be amazing. And with me today to talk about what happened this season, I have Hef and Forrest. Will you please, I know what people... A lot of people know you already. You have your own podcast with SecurityMetrics where you do the news. But if you wouldn't mind, in case people here on this podcast are new to you, please introduce yourself so people know who you are, what you do here.
Well, first of all, Jen, thank you for inviting us on your show. We love coming down. We love hanging out with you and talking with you.
Always a good time.
Yeah, and especially shedding a tear. This is the last episode of the year.
I know. It feels like how is this year already gone?
Yeah, too fast.
Yeah.
But it was damaging this year, and I can't wait to talk about that. But I am Hef. I am part of the SecurityMetrics Security Intelligence Center and the Threat Intelligence Center here, and I am the director. And our job is to kind of find the bad guys, stop them, notify our clients, and do that. So
Yeah.
I'm Forrest. I'm a Security Operations Center analyst, so I hunt down the badness and report it. So,
Yeah,
never a dull moment.
and if people have been following along, Forrest and I actually went to DEF CON, and we got to do a little bit of recording there together. It was super fun. It was actually my favorite time ever of going to DEF CON because nobody was there. I know that sounds rude, but yeah, I mean, I got to go into... it was empty. I got to go into all the labs. Unknown reasons, really.
Wow.
I mean, who would have figured? But
Yeah.
today, this topic is super exciting because we get to talk about the top 10 breaches of 2021. Now,
insert crowd noise.
yeah. What was funny about this is, of course, being very logical, I got these questions. The largest in terms of impact, the largest in terms of records taken. What do you mean by largest?
Oh, yeah.
Definitions.
Yeah.
It's so hard to pick. I mean, that's the challenge. What do you go on? Do you go on all those metrics or?
Nope. Here's what we went on. Go by what's the most fun to talk about, and that's what we're going to do. So,
Yes.
starting in the 10th place, we have Kroger via Accellion.
Oh yes. And Accellion, this thing just snowballed.
Oh, yeah.
And Jen, there were probably hundreds and hundreds. I mean, University of Stanford got caught up in this. Defense contractors, everyone and anyone got caught up with the Accellion breach.
Yeah, a bunch of places. Shell, Qualys, Morgan Stanley. Like it just goes on and on. Tons of universities. Like it was absurd. In my opinion, I think this one should have been higher up, but that's just me. What I thought was pretty interesting about this was the Five Eyes countries, so U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the U.K., issued a joint security advisory.
That never
about this
happens.
thing.
Yeah.
That was like, whoa, all right, hold the phone. But yeah, for a product that was essentially reaching end of life.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was on its way out to being sent to pasture, and then it got owned hard.
And then just goes to show you, we hear all the time as auditors, well, this is going to be sunsetted anyway. We're changing over to this new thing, so this isn't going to really matter. Do we really have to talk about this?
Right, the end of life stuff. Especially in this example, you have Accellion FTA appliance. It's on-prem, which makes it already dangerous. And then you have folks that are just not following the directive that, hey, we're not going to support this anymore. Accellion saying that. Yeah. And then I think they released a patch in December. And then if you did not do that patch and you missed out on the next patch, which a lot of businesses missed out on the email, and that's all Accellion did. So they were in a little hot water about that, where they sent out the notification, but if your IT admin missed it to do the patch,
And how many emails do we get every day?
It exploded. But you know, Jen, what made this dangerous, especially for people like companies like Kroger, is you have all those medical records, the pharmacies that they have. Yeah. And I think there was something like 1.47 million records or something, medical records, Jen, that were caught up in this. Yeah. So I think that's why we kind of have it in there. I know from an attribution standpoint, the bad guy was, they attributed to the Klopp ransomware gang. And Fin11. And Fin11, they're very dangerous folks out there. They love to target certain industries. They love to go after the financial aspects of getting their ransom and so on. So
there are some groups that will not go after healthcare, but most of them just do not care. Kroger said they only lost 1% of its customers were affected.
Well, And you remember that number's a little misleading. That's 1% of customers that are actually registered as shopping at Kroger. So there's a lot of people that go in there and they don't have their typical their Kroger card.
Do you have a shopper's card? I always say no, because guess what? Don't.
Or you pay in cash. You're not going to be part of this breach.
Just use 8675309.
Jenny. All right, let's go to number 9. Carnival.
Do you like to cruise, Jen?
I can't. I have never been on a cruise. I got talked into agreeing to go on a cruise this spring, and I am stressed about it because you know why?
Why?
You're trapped on a boat. What am I gonna? I can't face it. It's gonna be.
You smuggle liquor in shampoo and conditioner bottles. That's what you do.
Oh, so you go and just have a wild rager for like a
Don't
week.
follow Forrest advice,
Okay.
But Jen, this was their 4th data breach in 2 years.
Oh.
That's what's disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's filthy disgusting.
Yeah. Not only that, this was the second time they got hit with ransomware.
Yeah.
They apparently didn't learn the lesson the first time.
And when you look at all the times that they have gotten hit with ransomware or any kind of damage, cybersecurity damage, it's like you would think they would have learned. I mean, one time it was a phishing email. Another time it was just unsecured hardware. When this breach got announced in March, prior to that, you're talking in 18 months, 4 times in 18 months where they had this happen. And Carnival, the amount of data they collect is ridiculous. Every part of the guest experience is tracked or data is collected in some way, shape, or form. So is it necessary? I don't know about that, but all of that data got breached. And you're talking, again, social security numbers, health information, passport numbers, because you're on a boat. I'm on a boat.
I would be. Don't make me sing again. I would be interested to know, are these boats under whose laws do they fall under? Because if you have a data privacy concern and you want your data scrubbed from an ocean-going vessel, how? I need to look that up.
I remember there was a lot of yelling happening because a lot of these cruise lines had them registered as being under a different country of origin. Yeah. So when it came time for the TARP payments and COVID and getting that bailout money, they're like, oh, we need this, and it's like, but you're saying that your ship is registered under whatever country, so you don't qualify. There was a lot of
chaos on the seas.
Oh, yeah. One more thing about this Carnival breach is they're very not forthcoming with what happened to your data. We still don't know to this day who the attribution is. We don't know who the bad guy is, and we haven't really got any updates from Carnival and any kind of press releases or anything like that. So again, it seems shady, is what it comes down to. And do I trust myself on a company that is not being forthcoming with how they're handling my data?
In my heart of hearts, I really don't like regulations and I don't like compliance. Why am I am an auditor is beyond
You're in the wrong
me.
job.
I know it's weird, but actually,
but you're good at it though.
But
and
if there's a purpose behind it, right? If we can increase security by enforcing compliance, I am 100% on board for that. But the question is this caused because, like you said, well, who is in charge of these ships? Who gets to say what the rules are for them? And if the rules are, then who forces them except for their customers? And are their typical customers going to know that they've had breaches? Is their typical customer going to understand, even if they did have a breach, and then they hear the marketing, we care very much about your whatever.
It's the same lame press release. And we've talked a lot about this on our show, where we talk about how poorly written these press releases are about these data breaches.
They're just fluff pieces.
Yeah. And the good thing is, the governments, especially in the U.S., they're working on legislation right now to clear up breach notification.
Yeah.
And you talk about a standardized breach notification law. What you need to see in these press releases that go out is going to be critical. You'll see that trend over the next decade.
Yeah, we're seeing some good things come out of HIPAA, of all places, because when breaches happen and then they go through the whole process of settlement, the HHS OCR takes and publishes what they found, and they publish what they're going to do about it, and what caused the thing in the first place. We learn so much about data breaches in the healthcare industry because of that publication. And just imagine what we could do if we had deeper insight into some of these other organizations. Well, should we go on to number 8? Neiman Marcus.
This, and this is a tough one to talk about. It's big because it's the name, right? It's the name Neiman Marcus. But when you look at the records that were compromised, it was only 4.6 million records, right? Only,
Wait a minute.
right? But yeah, it wasn't as many as what you're going to see. The audience is going to see over the next couple breaches that we talk about here. But talk about 4.6 million. Credit cards, payment information, virtual gift cards. And we still, at this time, that was a new breach. That Neiman Marcus just happened in September.
Yeah.
So we don't really have, I don't think we have attribution on that yet. Who did it?
Not as far as I could see. It's kind of interesting to note that all of this came about after they had filed for Chapter 11.
Oh.
So they apparently have come out of that now. They got bought by some investment firms to float them back up. But I would not doubt that as part of that process that, security probably was not at the forefront of their minds. And after all, IT is a cost center, right?
Yeah.
So I do wonder if that had some type of role in this breach.
Good call.
Yeah. That's it's frustrating when you're right. 4.5 million people. It's a small number compared to some breaches, but then that's 4.5 million people who have had to deal with fraud against their credit cards, potential identity theft,
The inconvenience factor.
the inconvenience factor alone. But then when you take into account, depending on how much information they had from them, they could have really caused some problem for people's everyday lives. Yeah. And that's why I love security, is knowing that the work that we do affects people positively in their day-to-day. I mean, we've all lost a credit card, right?
Yeah.
And then it's a hassle, or a driver's license. But imagine a bad guy having it.
Yeah.
And how much worse that is. And so that's why I like this.
But again, in the Neiman Marcus case, the press release, folks, was horrific. I mean, it didn't really tell you anything. And again, it just happened in September. And to this day, we still don't really have much information on what we should be doing or how we should be handling our lost Neiman Marcus account. So
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's it's Neiman Marcus. They're rich enough to have somebody run wild on their card.
nothing to
right?
see here, folks. Move along, move along.
Hey, let's move on to the little people. Number 7, Robinhood. Robinhood has been in the news this year, right?
Yep. Retail investors.
Stock trading app Robinhood.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride for them, and I don't know. You guys probably remember earlier in the year where a few small groups of people took, what was it?
GameStop.
GameStop, that's the name. The game.
That's who
They
these
took
were
GameStop up, and they
Wall Street bet apes. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I'm shocked how many people use Robinhood, and I mean shocked. I didn't realize it was that popular. I didn't know 7 million people used, and that's how many records were caught up in this breach. 7 million just happened. This thing just broke. This story just broke a few weeks ago. If you're watching this, but we don't have attribution yet. We don't know who the bad guy is. We do know that the vast majority of people that were affected, according to the press release, they basically just lost their email address and their full name. But as far as we know, there were a small select group of people, like 310 people, who lost everything. Name, date of birth, zip codes. More extensive account information was caught up in that smaller percentage.
Why? What was that? What was different about that 310?
There's some inner circle type conversations that I've heard that social engineering was used to convince an employee to give up access to certain systems within Robinhood's infrastructure. And they did it through their customer support. So it sounded like social engineering was used to get through a customer support representative. And that's how some of that light information got out. So that's why it was only such a small amount of people, is because that customer support representative only had access to that small amount of people.
Interesting.
But still dangerous though. I mean, especially, if you're running all your investments through one app, one company, one bank.
Well, and apparently it's very popular with like the 20-somethings.
Yeah.
2 of my 3 kids use Robinhood, and I had no idea, but they think it's fun and they think it's interesting, and yeah.
Can I just add? I mean, if you are using Robinhood, anytime you experience this, there are some things you can do. Obviously, change your passwords.
Right.
Forrest will talk about this forever. Never use the same password, multiple accounts. Turn on MFA. Robinhood actually allows you to do that.
Nice.
Setting up short-term fraud alerts for something like Robinhood is important. Freezing your credit report. I'm sure people have heard that before.
Yep.
Blocking your credit report, which is a good tactic to do. Credit monitoring service. And you'll probably get another year subscription for free.
Right. And
because
people
they give that for
get
everything.
so tired of hearing this, and yet it's the right thing to do. These are the things that we just do. Just like, getting your oil changed.
Yeah.
Right.
Locking your door when you leave the house.
Yeah.
Forrest actually said, I mean, if you use Robinhood, you should probably watch the movie too to get your mind off the damage that's been done. Robinhood Men in Tights, the Mel Brooks film.
Okay,
it's the best
That's what he
version.
recommended.
Clearly.
Yeah, that's what he. So I take
I
my
thought
advice.
I thought we were going with the Kevin Costner. What was anyway?
Robinhood. Yeah.
Yeah.
And while we're on the topic of apps that allow you to do MFA, and for people, I'll bet all of our listeners know this, but just in case, MFA is multi-factor authentication. It's where you have a user. Usually it's this: you have a username, you have a password, and then you have some other like a authentication app on your phone, or you have a text that comes to you with a number, something like that. But it's different than just a username, password, and another thing. It has to be something else that comes to you, right? Or a physical token, something like that. So MFA is really important and people often hate it because they're like, well, it slows me down. Yes.
But it protects you.
If it slows you down,
do it.
Imagine what it does to the bad guys.
My argument for that is if it's properly implemented, it will usually be faster. For instance, if you mentioned one of those physical tokens, somebody has a YubiKey, you literally reach down and you touch the side of your computer and there it is.
Ta-da.
That's
magic.
That's the standard that developers should be striving for.
Yeah.
I know I have vented about this many times in the past, but please, phishing, all these kinds of things, it's a solved problem. Please.
Yes. Yeah. And YubiKeys, besides which, it's like you said, it's easy to use. They're kind of cool. What do you use? I got a YubiKey. Right? But you know what else offers multi-factor authentication that everybody should be using, and they don't often think about it? And because I was thinking of 20-somethings, Instagram.
Oh, yes, right.
Facebook. Did you know that they offer multi-factor authentication? Yeah. And a lot of people don't think, well, it's just my account. Nope, it's more than that, because this is where a lot of social activity happens, but it's also where a lot of business happens. And so I just wish everybody would kind of get used to the idea that MFA is just something that you do. And if you don't have it installed, something's wrong.
It always amazes me too, like the amount of people that get popped on Facebook. Oh, my Facebook account's been hacked. My Instagram account's been hacked. And my response is always the same. Did you not know they had MFA? Could you please turn it on? That'll save you from this conversation, because it's multiple times a year. I see this.
Yeah.
Just turn it on. It's that simple.
Yeah. Save yourself the embarrassment of, I didn't write those messages.
Yeah.
Unless that's just your crappy cover.
Ignore my message to you. Yeah, ignore my text.
It's a terrible thing to say, Forrest.
Don't drink in social media.
Yeah.
I think that's probably wise. So what you're saying is I should not take a laptop on the trip on the cruise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. When you
Putting
crack into your
together.
shampoo bottle. Yeah.
Number 6. This one made me so mad, and that's why it's so high up, because bacon is life. So number 6, JBS USA meat plant.
Jen, this is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Folks in the audience, it's the largest attack ever on our food production. That right there moves it to at least to the beginning part of this list that we have for you. The largest attack on food production.
I should probably withhold my opinions of meat.
Vegan.
11
not quite vegan.
$11 million in ransom payments. They actually paid the ransom.
Yeah.
So that makes you even more frustrated, on top of the largest attack on the food production plant.
The amount of the ransom that was paid was pretty incredible.
Ridiculous.
It was they had requested, I think it was 25 million initially.
Yep.
Negotiated it down to 11. That was still a pretty massive price tag compared to even some of the breaches that we still have coming up in down
And this
the line.
happened in May, but it really wasn't until July where you start to really hear about it in the news. You start to see meat prices rise.
Yeah.
And how much of that is justified, we don't know. But I mean, people were panicking when they heard this happen. People were worried about losing their jobs. And you think about how big JBS is. It's Brazilian-based company, but they got meatpacking plants all over the slaughterhouses, Canada, U.S., Australia. That's a huge footprint. To talk about.
It's massive. And then also when you consider, and I think all of us have experienced this over the last year and a half, is food supply insecurities.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing that there are some ways that they're not as solid as we thought. You can't just go to the store anytime you want and get anything you want. And I think we understand that now.
Yeah.
And this attack on food production should be considered an attack on critical infrastructure.
Right.
Because our food supply is something that is pretty important to us. And so when we look at that, people who are in the business of supplying food, what kind of cybersecurity do they have in place?
None. And that's what the takeaway is you get on this. And Jen, what makes this even worse, the attribution on this was Revil. And we've talked numerous times on our show about Revil and the damage. And I'm sure Forrest, he can rant and rave about Revil. But preceding this attack, there were some 40 additional attacks that got glossed over in the news that you didn't even really hear about. 40 additional attacks on different food producers. You're talking about proceeding in the 12 months preceding the GBS attack, including Molson Coors. So, I know that when the beer supply got attacked, people were really upset about that too. Don't mess with the beer.
No,
right?
exactly. Well, was Revil also the one responsible for attack on our water supply system in Tampa, or was that a different group?
Boy, they all go together at some point.
Right.
I think
it's
you're
kind
right
of
on that.
blurring at this point. I
believe-
could be wrong about who did that. But I just remember, we were getting attacks on things that immediately affect our health and well-being. And we can joke about Molson Coors, but I mean, it is the banquet of beers. So
Right.
All right. Just
But we don't even have that water supply attack you're referencing.
Yeah.
That's not even in our top 10 list, but it's a critical piece of infrastructure. And I'll probably highlight that if we have an after show here. But yeah, that water supply, attacking on the water supply, attacking the food supply, you just don't do that.
No.
And now we fast forward in time. Reville's been shut down. They rebranded themselves. Very quickly they went offline to try to minimize the damage.
Yeah, I wonder
and they
if
released the decryptor.
somebody smacked him pretty hard, I guess.
Yeah.
My husband was working in Tampa at the time that attack happened. As soon as attacks start feeling personal, people start taking action on what does this mean to my business? But the hope is that even if your business hasn't been affected, even if people are still secure, the takeaway is learn from other people's mistakes. Because if you don't, it gets much more expensive to fix the mistake than to, even though I understand cybersecurity is expensive. But you know what's worse? Cyber attacks.
Yeah, the damage. And the number one thing that you take away from all of these breaches, Jen, is the human element. And you'll hear about that a lot. It's the human element in nearly all of these breaches where the human either clicked on the fish, or they didn't do the patching, or they didn't do the basic steps, the cyber hygiene steps that we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
They didn't do it. And that's why we keep having this.
Yeah. Yep. So we're going to keep talking about it until everybody's great.
Yes.
So that takes us to number 5, T-Mobile.
I want to get up right now and walk out. That's how upset I am. This one got me more upset and more fired up than any of the other breaches. All right, even more than the food supply. Forrest,
Do you have T-Mobile?
Former. So that's the thing. That was the thing that was really infuriating about it, is that even though I no longer use their service, I was still impacted by this.
Oh no!
Like, they were no longer getting my money. They were no longer providing me service, but they
still had your
they
data.
still breached my info.
8th data breach in 3 years. Let that sink. I'm going to repeat it. All right, that's how important it is. 8th data breach in 3 years, 54 million records. And then they tried to gloss over it. The initial report, Jen, they came out with was like, oh, it's just 40 million records. That was the original press release. Oh, and then we revised it to say 54 million records. And Jen, the way this went down was atrocious. The attribution part of it, how it actually happened. You want to try to explain that, or you want me to?
What I thought was incredible was the attacker then came forward. This dude in Turkey, John Bin,
Just slamming in our faces.
Yeah, just like he didn't care. He's like, I want people to know how bad their security is.
Yeah.
Like that like
he came out in the news and he said it awful. T-Mobile security was awful.
Well, clearly.
Yeah.
And the way he said it was, I was able to get access to their data center. Everything was left unprotected. I was able to get in, found stored credentials on their servers. I was able to get access to more than 100 servers. I got in there, and guess what I did, folks? I got 54 million social security numbers, names, addresses, driver's license, IMEIs from the phone, IMSIs from the phone, anything that was stored with those accounts. John, an American now living in Turkey, was able to get access to. And then to go on TV and the news and brag about it and just this breach, there's so many little things that have me so upset. I'm ready to throw the laptop right now.
Yeah. The compensation was basically, we'll give you some subscription services for free for a while, and we'll give you a couple of years of identity protection. And it's like, okay, when I actually tried to sign up for it, you just get a sales runaround. They're trying to get you to give them money. It's like, no. Yeah.
They make great TV commercials. They sponsor stadiums wonderfully. And by the way, now we're going to give you Disney Plus. We'll give you a year of Paramount Plus, and we'll throw in Apple TV for a year. And MLB's TV subscription. It's like clean up your act.
Breach as loss leader is not. That's just not classy.
No.
Fix it.
Absolutely scummy in my opinion.
And then when you think about, there are people like you who were affected, regular everyday folk, but in records that are that many, and then they have enough information about the phone. Do they have enough that they could clone the phone?
Well,
SIM swap.
Yeah, that's the word. Could they have SIM swapped with this information? Possibly. And so then you think, well, how many world leaders had T-Mobiles? How many heads of industry had T-Mobile? So it's not just the frustration and impact to the individuals, but also people who have enough power in our lives that it could cause additional harm to a greater group of people.
Yeah. Once again, going back to the whole idea of critical infrastructure, this most definitely fits that criteria. And I would really like to see them clean up their act because, man, how many times does it take before they
honestly, shame on you, T-Mobile. Get it together. All right. So then why are these guys on the list? Number 4, I mean, I know why they're on the list, but I don't like talking about them. Facebook.
Well, it's now called Meta something, right? They changed their names.
Hey.
But number 3 and number 4 can kind of go together because the number 4 breach on our list is 533 million records leaked as part of Facebook. But prior to that happened in April. But prior to that, in January, there was another leak of Facebook information and Instagram and LinkedIn via Socialarks. So we can kind of numb those two together. The January leak was caused by the Chinese company, a social media management company called Socialarks. So what happened then is by April, the threat actors, they gathered up all of that original data from the leak in January and packaged it with another round of leaks. And most of this all came out of these API, these data scrapes, which do you want to kind of dive? We talked a lot about data scraping.
Yeah. Basically just requesting web pages and copying the information, but done thousands of times a second.
Automated bots are scraping the API, and they're collecting all that data that's available open in the API that's not locked down. And then they're reselling that and packaging it on the dark web.
Yeah, but it's not a breach. It's not a breach, Matt.
This is Forrest soapbox right
here. Yeah, that information was publicly available, and it's like, okay, like,
oh my goodness,
you guys have no controls in place to stop somebody making all these thousands and thousands of requests.
Feels a little bit like what the definition of is.
But that was. damaging in that with Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, they just downplay these data scrapes.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's nothing to see here, nothing big. Don't worry about
Let's put it in perspective for people. 533 million records. What's the population of the United States of America?
360 some odd million.
330, 360, somewhere in there. I don't know. I'd have to go look it up again.
Yeah.
But look, and that's more than that. Just to put it in perspective for people, because sometimes big numbers are really hard to get in our head. So we're talking, of course, these are from other countries as well, but also, of course, a lot of our population is below the age that should even have a Facebook. So what we're talking about is pretty much affected everybody.
Yeah.
One in 14 people globally, if we will. Like, come on.
To be very clear, though, in the April Facebook data scraping where you had these 533 million records, it also included the data from that January breach with Socialarks. And the Socialarks Chinese social media company, that was actually caused by an unsecured, stop me if you've heard this before, an unsecured elastic database. And that we've talked, countless times. The number of breaches because of you have an unsecured database.
It's
year?
Obscene. I think it's actually kind of hilarious. I once went to an elastic engineering certification course that was hosted in a Marriott the week after they disclosed that they got breached because of their insecure elastic server.
Lovely.
It was
good takeaways from those. I hear a lot about how the cloud can't be secured, yada yada, and I think that that's a dangerous message.
Yeah.
Because then people don't use a tool that is excellent in many purposes, but also B, they just say, well, everybody's going to get breached, so we just have to kind of plan for it. But securing your cloud environment it is a known thing. What you have to do is it's not magic. Oh, we couldn't secure it because nobody had secure magic, right? Somebody just straight up didn't follow the instructions. And I've been through a lot of AWS documentation that goes step by step by step. Here is what you do for security. Here's what you do to make sure you have done that step correctly.
And they have videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Videos that are free.
They're free. Yeah.
It's very damaging, and it's very disheartening to hear that especially with today's knowledge of cloud and cloud security, and knowing that this is such an important threat vector for the bad guys to enter your place, that you gotta have that on the forefront of your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So we actually have number 3 listed, what we just talked about, and we kind of swept right from Facebook into the whole Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Socialarks thing. Yeah. And so when you consider the 214 million from that unsecured, the unsecured database, and then the 533 million, added onto it from the scraping, Facebook's
They got some problems. They did patch it, and they did. I think it was 2019 where Facebook came out and they tried to patch it or something. But it's not just them; it's countless other companies where their API is just vulnerable. I mean, we could go through hundreds of these use cases where this past year we had a breach, and the breach was caused by the data being scraped from the API. But it's not a breach, folks. So nothing to see here. Move along.
In some way, I think the message has to be, taken not just to businesses but also developers. Yep. And because what I see is that somebody will have an idea and they'll develop a thing without thinking at all about security. Okay, if you're a developer and you want to develop this thing, that's fine. And if you don't know the security, that's fine too. But you know what? There are lots of people out there who do know it, and you should maybe run past them what it is that you're doing instead of developers. Sometimes, and I'm not trying to knock on developers, I love developers, but sometimes they try to wear all the hats when they don't know all the hats.
Yeah, and we brought that up last week in our show where they talk about the Discord breach and how Discord prioritizes functionality in their app over security. And when you have that mindset, security is always going to lose out. Yeah. And then we as a customer lose out on that ability to protect our data.
Yeah. I feel a lot of the time developers are put in a hard place where they're given some very strenuous time constraints, and it's like, you need to get this thing done by this point in time. That's it. Move on to the next thing and just pump it out one after another. Yeah. So it's
not an easy job for them at all.
No, it's not. And if you look at the so a lot of people are in the agile world and they do the Scrum type things, but and they they fail to recognize the real definition of done, because the real definition of done is it on production systems with security applied? And that just doesn't somehow get into the big visible charts that everybody uses so that everybody knows. So something has to be done to shift that, even if they're not the ones doing the work on the production systems, doing the work on the security controls. They need to make sure that that gets put into what that definition of done, so you don't wrap up something and go on to something else without really hitting that finish line.
Yeah. And I always say I care about my data in transit, is it encrypted? My data at rest, is it encrypted? Those are the kind of things. If you get that in the forefront of your mind in the way you're coding, we got a good shot here at maybe stopping the bad guys.
Yeah. So number 2, MS Exchange breach. What happened there?
Oh boy, what didn't happen there? Oh, so yeah, 4 zero-day exploits were leveraged by China according to attribution.
Yeah, Hafnium, I believe, wasn't it Hafnium?
Yeah,
and at least
Hafnium.
9 other threat actors were involved in this.
Yeah. Later on, once they started publishing patches, then everybody just hopped on board. At that point, it was reverse it and see what you can get out of it.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people don't know when a patch gets released, that's when you're really vulnerable, because you have to get it installed. Otherwise, the bad guys have already gone in and said, oh, what's this patch do? Oh, I know how to breach this vulnerability.
Yeah, they start scanning. And that's what they did in this situation. There was an estimated 250,000 servers at one point that were vulnerable, that did not have these patches done. And Jen, you're talking not just anyone that uses Microsoft Exchange, but you're talking about MSSPs and these providers, these service providers that are using it, countless government agencies, businesses around the world. I mean, Forrest, like Norwegian Parliament, right?
Yeah.
They got hit. I think it was the European Banking Authority.
Yep.
Anybody that had Exchange in their environment that was not patched. And this started like really December. The first exploit got announced in January, but it did pick up steam in the news, and businesses and their patch management teams did not jump on this till like March. That means like the threat actors had 30, 60, 90 days of window time to start scanning for these vulnerable servers and just taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, and a lot of it wasn't even discovered until it was already being exfiltrated. They would see all of a sudden, massive account downloads, like grabbing all the email for specific accounts. Like, that's when it was tipped off. It was like, whoa, hey, hold on. Something's not right here.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Yep.
We were all over it, though. I'll tell you, our SecurityMetrics Threat Intelligence Center, the minute we found out about it, January, we were on the phone with our clients going, hey, let's work some magic and get this thing fixed.
Well, because you have ears out. You guys actually love this threat hunting thing. And so many times when I ask customers, especially the first year, where do you go for your threat intelligence? Where do you go to make sure that you know what's going on? And they'll say, well, we have a WSUS server, and like, that's fine. That is good. I'm glad you have that. But if you don't have someone in the company that loves knowing what's going on in the world of the big bats, you're gonna miss out.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and if your patch management stuff's not automated, then you're gonna miss out as well. I mean, there's so many little cyber hygiene type activities that can be done.
You know what's really hard for some groups is they can't patch out of band. There are some companies that are so big and have so many complexities that kind of intertwine that for them to do a patch out of band it really affects their business. They really struggle to keep up with that. And so to get 0 days, and then that's the question always from the side of like Microsoft. Well, we have 0 days. Do we release a patch out of band knowing that some of these massive companies cannot apply this patch yet? Or do we hold knowing that some of the bad guys know about the exploit? Because if we release the patch, then all the bad guys are going to know about the exploit, right? Yeah. So it's that kind of balance of when you know it's bad, if you hear about an out-of-band patch being released, that's news, and that's something that your patching group should know about and be on top of.
Yeah, most definitely. A point kind of tangential to that, I think, is maybe if your organization is one such that you're not able to easily apply those kinds of patches, maybe you should be outsourcing that. Make that somebody else's responsibility to do the patching. I mean, largely Office 365 and Exchange Online were not impacted by these. These were on-prem.
Yeah.
So, weigh that out. Like at that point, then it's Microsoft's problem.
Right.
I do think kind of putting yourself in this larger school of fish is a very valid defense. If you are amongst thousands of others, unless you're being targeted or something gets everything en masse, there is some safety in numbers.
Zebras in a herd.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
But also somebody else whose responsibility, whose job it is to be on top of these things and take care of them.
It helps.
You want that. You want that on your side. So, I know that, and I'm not trying to sell things, you guys. I always feel uncomfortable talking about what our services are, but maybe people want to know. But the fact that you guys have that kind of a service, the Security Operations Center as a service, threat hunting as a service.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love is that these guys do a weekly internal threat briefing. We get to hear all of the cool stuff they find and what they're doing about it and how it affects customers. And you guys are just doing a bang up job. It's really exciting to listen to that.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun. I tell you, well, you have to have the heart for it. You have to have the wherewithal to want to be a threat hunter. You have to have, what's the right word? The intestinal fortitude, just this hunger, this thirst,
sense of masochism,
slight sense of OCD.
Our industry is ripe for burnout, so it's one of those things too. You have to find that balance that you don't get burned out.
Yeah, just take a cruise sometimes; it'll be fine.
On Carnival.
All right, that brings us to our number one most fun thing to talk about this time. Colonial Pipeline. You've heard it before here. You will hear it again. This one was aggravating.
Oh yeah. I would love to hear in the comments if people want to tell us what they think of their top 10 or their thoughts. But this Colonial one, it wasn't the largest ransom paid this year. I think Colonial paid something like 2.3 million Bitcoin to get their stuff back online. But the disruption and the chaos that this created, people were, I would be going nuts too on the East Coast. 45% of the oil supply running through the Colonial Pipeline, and to have it go offline, and then the fear factor that kicks in. Like, are we not going to have gas? Or when's the pipes going to be turned back on again? All those, are the prices going to go up?
Yeah. Just seeing the mob mentality of mass panic buying and people literally putting gasoline in garbage bags was...
Yes. Oh, I remember that.
That was devastating because people
absurd.
don't know enough
Dangerous.
about things to know, okay, first of all, that's a fire hazard, but also that will eat right through a garbage bag. And so not knowing how to prepare, and I am all about prepare for things, but not in the midst of a panic.
Yeah.
So like when there was no toilet paper, we had tons, not because we went out and buy it then, but because my husband plans ahead and goes, how many people are in the house right now? How much stuff? We need a year's worth of everything, right? And so that kind of mentality is not common. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people will look at that and say, oh, preppers are crazy. But you have to have that mindset. If you're a business and you rely on certain specific things to make your business go, what are you thinking is going to be there for you that won't?
Yeah. I think you're starting to see a lot of that mentality really start to pop up with these supply chain crunches. Everything has been tuned to be just in time, and everything needs to be working exactly and have these super thin margins and overhead. And now you're starting to see a lot of that come back to bite you, where it's like, oh crap, we need all of this, and now it's not available suddenly. So
we do need to talk about who the bad guy was in this situation.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Attribution was DarkSide, and they got a lot of heat for this because what DarkSide does is they run this thing called a ransomware as a service. So they have affiliates, and what you do is you pay DarkSide to become an affiliate. In return, they give you the tools, you help negotiate, or you as the affiliate, you break in and infiltrate the environment, and then they work the affiliate service will try to help negotiate the ransom part of the payment. Well, out of all this, DarkSide got shut down. When you go after the pipeline in the United States, you're going to get some heat, and they got some heat.
And they should have.
They've got $5 million bounty now for any DarkSide affiliates. $10 million bounty now from the State Department for anyone in DarkSide directly. Not just the affiliates. So,
and Forrest, I thought was interesting about this case was DarkSide actually has like a rules of engagement. So, Jen, if you're going to buy their services and use their tools, they say, hey, don't go after healthcare facilities or critical infrastructure. Well, this affiliate that bought their service, they did not listen. They just said, we're going to go after Colonial anyway.
So weird that criminals are not going to do what criminals are telling the criminals
We're not going
to
to
do.
follow your rules, DarkSide.
What?
Well, they didn't. And then, they wonder why. I mean, how the absolute, what's the right word I'm looking for? The chain effect of what this caused. I mean, you know, when you jack with the pipeline, the ancillary things that happen because of that, supply chain, trucks, airlines, fuel to run houses, all that stuff just starts collapsing.
Oh yeah,
not a good choice.
You started seeing a lot more of these ransomware as a service operators move further underground. I mean, they were getting banned off of forums, like no ransomware here. Like it was too hot to handle. Nobody wanted a part of it.
Yeah.
And so just drove it further underground, and yet we still see people getting popped with it. So it's still
lot.
there. It's just a lot more hidden away from view. What I thought was funny was they paid the ransom, 75 Bitcoin, which at that time was somewhere like $5 million-ish, 4.4 something. Anyway, and then they ended up restoring from their backups anyway because the decryption was too slow.
Yeah, the decryptor was slow.
man.
I remember that now.
Talk about insult to injury.
Yeah.
And then the feds then later were able to recover like 63 some odd of the Bitcoin. So,
but 100 gigabytes of their data was stolen too. Colonial Pipeline. So not only did the damage come from losing the gas, losing the use of the pipeline, paying the ransom, but then they lost their data on top of that. So I don't know who's out there paying for that kind of 100 gigabytes of Colonial Pipeline data. I don't know how valuable that would be, but I'm sure they're going to find a market on the dark web for it. So.
Yeah, I'm sure FSB is interested in that.
Well, and the director of IT there, that job opened up like a week later.
Yeah, that's right. They were looking for a CISO or something
They were. But we also know a little bit about why it happened, because they had their business functions on the same network as their operations functions.
No segmentation.
No segmentation. And for people who don't know about that, if you segment networks, then something bad that happens in one subnet it has a less chance of affecting another subnet. So let's say you have email business databases going on over here, and you have the functioning of the pipeline over here. If this gets popped, which it did because somebody clicked on something bad in an email, and takes down that, they could have still been able to run their pipeline if they had not had them so connected.
Yeah. It was the flow functionality, the operational technology was still functional. They shut down because they couldn't keep track of how much fuel they were shipping, so they couldn't bill for it.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting that was what caused that stoppage. But initially it was a compromised VPN account. Somebody had reused credentials.
Oh, okay.
So it was found on some other breach somewhere.
All right.
And then they went and password spray and gave it a shot, and sure enough, they got in. So
you have a good memory. You remember all the little details.
Oh no, I don't. I have a terrible memory.
And you find out what happens kind of in bits and pieces along.
Yep.
And so I think I heard an earlier story before that was actually confirmed to be that way. So, when you want to know why something happened, you should always trust Forrest over me. It's that whole, gotta be focused on the threats. Yeah. All right. Well, that is a really cool top 10 list. And also want to make sure people know we did this in not in January, sorry. We did this in November.
What year is it?
I don't even know. Who am I? This is November. And so something massive might still come up.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Well, guess what's coming up?
Oh, yeah, Black Friday.
Yeah.
The hackers love that. It's a buffet.
Yeah.
And we have the Christmas holiday, Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah.
End of the year is I mean, that's when we saw SolarWinds, you know? So it's, And
it's also a reporting period, too. Yeah, a lot of these businesses that maybe have been breached in September and August, they actually wait to make their announcements about their breaches till December, the holiday period, when the news media is not, people aren't really watching the news as much.
Yeah.
So they try to slide under the radar. So we may see something big happen.
That
may have happened like in the summer months, but now it's just now making the news.
And then add on top of that, every security guy that I know has been massively overworked this year.
Yeah.
Because we know about the changes. Like there were changes of people went from working in the office to working remotely. And then you know what? We had another massive change that a lot of people didn't prepare for, which was working remotely and coming back in the office. So the threats and vulnerabilities that they had to deal with and the changes in configuration and addressing these security controls. So here we are coming towards the end of the year. All of these guys probably have not taken sufficient days off and a lot of them have to probably take it or lose it, right? So we're coming into a time when we have increased potential threats because there's an increased richness of targets and fewer security guys able to take care of it. Yeah. I would be surprised if we didn't have something massive happen between Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays.
Yeah, you brought it up a little bit, but the expanded attack surface is just massive right now. Yeah, and there's so many creative tactics, techniques, procedures, not just the API data scraping, but we had talked about on our show the exotic code and malware. They're hiding malware now in processors and GPUs. And if companies aren't out there looking at securing their network perimeter, they're in for a lot of trouble. It's not just the remote workers. It's a lot bigger attack surface, a huge footprint for companies and businesses to try to protect.
So what is your prediction for either the end of the year or the coming year? What are you seeing if you look into the future?
I don't know. Prediction is hard for me.
Yeah.
I generally like to try and reflect on what has happened and get some ideas based off of that. I think there's probably going to be more trouble with IoT stuff. I think that a lot of these devices are just ticking time bombs waiting to happen. Mm-hmm. I would not be surprised to see a massive botnet come out of those kinds of things.
Well, we saw that too with the pink botnet.
Yep.
We had talked about that on our show as well. The pink botnet was something like 1.6 million
fiber routers.
Routers. The largest botnet ever just happened a week or two ago as of this recording. So I'm sure that's going to, they're just like testing the waters, right? Oh, we can do 1.6. I wonder if we can double that.
What else can I do?
We get the 3 million botnets?
Yeah. Well, when you consider some of the things that some of these social media companies and some of the like Nest and Ring and these other groups are trying to do to increase communication, increase use of their products, but they're possibly not doing it in a secure way. So when you're sharing your local network with your neighbors and everybody's on, how is that properly secured?
Yeah. And there's a big challenge right now. It's a hot mess. We had talked about on our show about the smart home protocols that are out there and how it's just a dumpster fire right now. You've got Zigbee competing with Z-Wave. You got Google versus Amazon and Lutron Connect RF and all these fancy protocols. Yeah. And just last week, Amazon said we're going to get ourselves behind Matter, which is the new protocol that's coming in the future, which is supposed to be more secure. But right now, a lot of these devices, they don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
You know what's more secure? Analog.
Yeah.
I actually took all of the smart home things out of my home. All of them. Nest, Ring, doesn't matter. All of the things that connect it are gone. Yeah. Now, if you want to change the temperature, you actually have to go do this. If you want to open the door, you actually have a key, right? The more I see what's happening with everybody's getting popped. Right, everybody's getting popped, and so if you can take over the entire Ring network, well. Can you lock people out of their homes? Can you let people in their homes? I just don't want it.
Yeah, convenience versus security for sure. I mean, there's so many of these devices that even once Matter is out, right? Like once that is the standard, like not everybody's going to go through and rip and replace all their gear. Like that's completely unrealistic. You're going to have a bunch of these vulnerable devices that are out in the wild for who knows how long. Yeah.
I mean, I lied a little bit. I do still have a webcam in my chicken coop. So,
well, the chickens have to be protected too.
Right. This has been absolutely fantastic session with you guys. Thank you so much for coming and talking to me.
Yeah,
Anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
I would just say the ransomware issue. You folks in the audience, you're probably tired of hearing about ransomware, but I mean, it's going to continue to be the cyber weapon of choice. You're still going to have ransomware as a service affiliates. They're still going to grow. You're going to continue to hear about ransomware 2.0.
Yeah,
it's not just data exfiltration. It's encrypting your data. It's holding it hostage. But right now we have as of this recording, we have about 124 separate families of ransomware that are out there, and hackers are very adept at these 124 different families. That's going to continue to grow. And unless you have a plan to get a hold of what happens if you have ransomware in your environment, or you have defensive mechanisms and user education and awareness, I mean, all that stuff has to be part of your thoughts going forward.
Extortion is big business.
Oh yeah. The double dip on the old ransomware. Yeah, it's pretty nasty stuff. Big takeaway for me: use multi-factor, use a password manager.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't know your password. The only password you should know is for your password manager.
Can you give me your password? I literally cannot.
Yeah, I couldn't if I wanted to. Rubber hose attack, hey, yeah. Can't give
All
you
right.
that.
Well, that's been fantastic. Sure, appreciate it. And we should do this again and do it soon. I really appreciate your time. And
we love hanging out with you.
And
Always a
awesome.
blast.
I'm sure that our listeners got a lot out of it too. Thank you again for joining us here on the Security Metrics podcast. Again, this is our last one for season 2, but starting in January, we're going to have season 3 starting. I'm very excited because Hunter, who we never see, but sometimes I talk to, is going to change up the look. So come back and see what it looks like in our next episode. Take care and talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. To watch more episodes of Security Metrics podcast, click on the box on the left. If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. See you on the slopes.